Fran Lebowitz, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you.
Now, people around the world queue up in theatres to hear your opinions and views on things. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I'm very grateful because, unfortunately, I'm not an heiress. So, although I'd be an excellent one. So I'm very happy they do that.
How do you describe what it is that you do?
This is not that easy. I mean, basically, I answer questions. What I do in these theaters is someone interviews me on stage for half an hour, then they leave. Sometimes they actually leave the venue. And then I answer questions from the audience for 1 hour.
How do you describe what you do not when you're on tour, but at home in New York? What is your description of the way your profession and the way you lead your life?
Well, when I'm home in New York, I'm on vacation, so that, I'm a writer, I don't know. Luckily, I don't have to actually describe this by law. I would like to be, I would like people to say, she's the President of the United States, but since I'm not, that's my description.
Is there no line in a tax return? You don't have to do a tax return that says what you do?
Yeah, but I don't do them myself. So I don't. All I imagine they say is, "This is Fran. She's in the 180% tax bracket."
I was thinking about what the words are that describe you, and in some ways you are maybe the last flaneur. The archetype of the person wandering around the boulevards, observing modern life. Is it a reasonable description of what you do?
Yeah, I think it is a pretty good description. But I feel like that some people very often will stop me as I'm walking around and say, "I'm sorry to interrupt you," because they think that the walking around is some formal thing I do, and that I'm in the middle of a scientific experiment. But also, it's because everyone else is looking at their phone. So to me, it's like an unbelievable gift. It's like the whole world said, "Fran, you can have the world. We're not going to be looking at it. We're just going to be looking at our phone."
But they might bump into you.
They might. And sometimes I bump them deliberately. If they don't look up at all, and they're not the sort of person I'd be physically afraid of, I bump into them.
Now, famously, you don't have a mobile phone. You don't have, I think, Wi-Fi at home. As someone who is a very acute, very funny observer of life, of modern manners, of mores, can you observe modern life if you're not in part of it, if you never go to the place where a lot of it happens?
Yes, I think that only I can do that because, first of all, the thing about the phone is that it's not the world, it's your world. It's a world of one, So, if you look up, you would see there are other people, there's other things going on. So yes, I do. I feel that I'm in a perfect position for this.
And yet, at the same time, each time a new platform comes along, when printing came along, when the Industrial Revolution changed printing again.
I'm not that old. I don't actually remember this.
True enough. But each time, mores changed, styles changed, language changed with it. For someone who's such an acute observer, don't you want to understand what's happening to the language you love?
I think I do understand it because people talk about it all the time. This is why I know that it's still new, because people talk about it all the time. When they first invented radio, not that I recall this personally, people couldn't understand it. How does this voices come through the air? And so a lot of writers of that time, like Robert Benchley, people like that time, that's how I know this, wrote essays trying, kind of satirically explaining how the radio works. And eventually, though, people stopped explaining it and they just listened to the radio. And so really, I feel like, I don't know, in New York, you see little kids looking at that phone, and I think they're going to be the ones that do something with it, as opposed to the people that are even 12 years old now, because they're still talking about it. So it's still, new.
You just mentioned one of the great Hollywood screenwriters, Robert Benchley, one of the great writers of the last century. Because you understand dialogue, you've got an ear for the things people say and the language they use. Did you ever think that you might like to have a go at writing dialogue?
When my first book came out, all the movie studios, which were still movie studios, tried to buy it for the movies, and I wouldn't sell it. And I kept saying, no, I don't want to do this. But Robert Benchley made shorts himself, that he appeared and he wrote them. And I said, I would like to do that. No. We can't do that anymore. We don't have shorts anymore. And the reason for that is if you have shorts, which probably no one listening knows what this is, they were short movies that could be like 10 minutes, 15 minutes long. And it's a perfect length for what is a comic essay. Then if you do that enough during the course of the day, the theater loses a showing. And so they wouldn't allow it. Of course, now that stuff like that is on the internet.
You just mentioned writing. I wonder if you were close friends with Toni Morrison. Is there a part of you that thinks if you can't write like Toni Morrison, there's no point trying to be a novelist or writing in long form? Is that real writing when it's
well, I mean, no,
at Toni
I don't think
level?
that. I mean, that's too high a bar. Although Toni, often said when she wrote her first book, and because if people who are young can't imagine what a revolutionary idea it was, a black female author. This was like, and when people would ask her why she wrote this book, she said, I wrote the book I wanted to read. And, you should write the book you want to read. She didn't mean everyone. I mean, there are far too many novelists now. I mean, far too many. There are more people, at least in the United States, that write books than read them. So first read some books before you try writing one. So no, I don't think, that Toni is an unusually important writer. You don't have to be that good, but you should be a little good.
A little bit good.
Yeah.
You miss Toni Morrison. I've heard you say that.
Yeah, very much, because, I mean, first of all, there's no one like her, and also because of how much I talked to her, several times a week, and if we were in the same place, I saw her. And also, she's, I would say, one of the few, if not the only person I ever, would actually seek her advice or opinion. And so now there's no one.
What was it about her advice?
I mean, the thing is about Toni is I have known really, I know a lot of smart people. I've known a lot of smart people, but I've only ever known one wise person, and that was Toni. So, all the wisdom I ever encountered in the world was in one person, and she's gone. So now there's zero wisdom.
You are, to a lot of outsiders, something like an archetypal New Yorker. So I do want to talk to you about New York. I heard you say that you look down on non-New Yorkers. What is it that makes you all so superior to us?
Have you ever been there?
I have.
So now you know. I mean, one of the things that, John Updike, who I would not ordinarily quote, but who lived in Boston during the era of the New York novelist, said that people who live in New York think that people who don't are somehow kidding. And I thought, that was to me, that's the only thing I remember John Updike ever saying. So that...
I think he would be a bit sad to hear
that. Yes. I mean, I don't think anyone even knows who he is anymore, frankly. And these guys, those kind of mid and late 20th century male novelists were the center of American culture. It's hard even to imagine that now. But so I think that one of the things is New York is so hard to live in. It is so hard living there that if you ever live any other place, if you rent a house somewhere in the country, you can't believe how easy life is. You say things like, guess what? Going to the dry cleaner is an errand. In New York, it's like a Wagnerian opera. Every single thing is really hard. And so I think that New Yorkers in some way, even unconsciously, we look down on people who have life that is not hard enough. Your life's not ridiculous enough, not expensive enough,
So it's the craziness of New York. It's not because it's sort of culturally superior.
Well, it is culturally superior. Of course it is.
But then, so then my question is, the French say that, after Paris, it's the desert. So is it just what every country thinks about its capital, or
well, I mean,
capital?
I've never heard New Yorkers look down on Paris. So there are a few other. I mean, Paris is okay.
You're prepared to
So
accept.
yeah, Paris, okay. But Paris is not the United States. So, in the United States, when people talk about, I don't know, L.A. or San Francisco, that's ridiculous.
Lots of cities around the world are having a moment talking about flight. Young families can't afford to live in the city. We're going to end up with just a bunch of old rich people in these cities. But I've heard you say that's actually not what really happens in New York. It should be. It's incredibly expensive, but that's not New York, is it?
New York is psychotically expensive. I mean, it's... And people, lots of times kids say to me, I really want to live in New York, but I can't afford it. And I say, it doesn't matter. No one can. No one can afford to live in New York. No one can afford to live in New York. It's totally unaffordable. And yet, almost 9 million people live there. So somehow, come to New York, you'll figure it out. I mean, you're not going to live well if that's what you have in your mind. I'm going to have a nice life. You're not. But you're going to have an interesting life.
Martin Scorsese's made 2 films about you. One of them is itself a sort of paean to New York. Scorsese says something very interesting about his work at the moment, which is he's getting rid of everything that's unnecessary. Do you have a view about your work, your thinking changing as you get older?
Well, your thinking certainly changes. I know Marty is highly aware of his age. He's always saying, how many more movies can I make? How many, but Marty, is unlike me in many ways. One way is which he is a very hard worker. I'm not. So, you become conscious. I mean, at least I get more and more angry at people who waste your time. Because it's like, I feel like, guess what? I don't have this time anymore. Like, when you're young, you should waste your time. I mean, because time is the money of youth. You need money more when you're old. I mean, I never really care. Not only don't care about money, I hate it. I wish I didn't have to deal with it. But when you're young, if you think money's important, then there's something wrong with you. But you need a lot of money when you're old, but it's not a good replacement for time. But it's all you have.
Do you think the world is better for young women now than it was for you?
Oh, no question. There's no comparison. Being a girl is about 1 billion times better now than when I was a girl. It's not good, but it's much better. There's just no comparison.
In what way?
In every possible way. I mean, when I was, a girl, if you would ask your parents, I mean a child, not a young woman, if you would ask your parents, you want to do something, and they said no, and you said why, they would say because you're a girl. And that was the answer. And that was the acceptable answer. Now, people may still think this, but most people don't say this. There is just no comparison. It's something I would never have imagined.
Does that give you joy that the world is better in some ways?
Well, I wish had been better for me, but I would prefer that things are better for me than for people I don't even know. But it is much better. It is much, much better.
I want to talk about politics. Do you think that the Democrats, you talk about the Democrats a lot, do you think that the Democrats have learnt anything about those people that Hillary Clinton called the deplorables?
I think that it's very hard for people who are reasonable to understand these Republicans. So I always say to people, it's very easy. First of all, they're not Republicans. They're anarchists. I know the left in the United States, a lot of them pride themselves on being anarchists, but they're not. The Republicans are anarchists. They're destroyers of government, destroyers of democracy. So Democrats are always trying to analyze them. Why do they think this? Why do they think that? And I said, a 6-year-old could tell you what's wrong with these people. They are mean and they are stupid. And it's as simple as that. They pride themselves on their stupidity, their ignorance, and their meanness. They're really mean. The things that they want to do, like, let's not give any food. We have something in the United States called food stamps, which is if you don't make enough money to buy food, the government can give you these stamps which you can use to buy food. This is something they're very much against. And at the same time that they're very much proclaiming their Christianity, which is, I always say, look, I'm not an expert in Jesus, okay? But I feel like food stamps, Jesus might have had that idea himself, So they're very mean, and they're really stupid, and they're very proud of their ignorance.
Let me just ask you this, because Bernie Sanders has been saying, and said in fact on our program recently, that he wanted Australians to understand that all of those people voting MAGA, voting Trump, are not racist. They're people who have suffered financially.
Well, he's wrong. He's wrong. He's often wrong, Bernie Sanders, by the way. So he is wrong. They are racist. Racism is the central appeal of Trump. They're misogyny and racism. Racism first, and then misogyny. So that Bernie Sanders is just wrong about that. I mean, there are many people who suffered. Of course, there are people who suffer, but if you're talking about people, what Trump talks about and what other people like Trump talk about is, I'm going to bring back the 1950s. That's what they talk about. I'm going to bring back the 1950s. I'm going to bring back what they're talking about. I'm going to bring back industry to the United States.
You wouldn't like to go back to the 1950s, would you?
I would not, but you're not going to bring back anything. No one is going to turn the clock back. So yes, I, by the way, was very opposed to NAFTA, which is what pushed all the industry out of the United States. Clinton
So
is the
to
one.
be clear, that's that was the agreement done with Mexico that
Right.
led to a lot of jobs going to
And
cheaper business in
And that was
Mexico.
Clinton, by the way.
Yes.
And I was very opposed to that. All my friends were yelling at me, you sound like Ross Perot, who was a third-party candidate. I said, well, he's right about this.
Third-party candidates, you reminded me. How dangerous is Kennedy Jr.? Does he really pose a threat to Biden, do you think?
I don't think so. I think that whatever attraction he has for people is more from the right. I don't know what happened. I used to be friends with Bobby. He's gone literally crazy. People use the word crazy all the time. They don't really mean it, but people go, what happened to Bobby Kennedy?
And what's the answer?
I have no idea, but he seems to have gone nuts.
You said recently the ideal age for president is around 50. Does that mean that Joe Biden shouldn't run?
Well, I wish that he had not decided to run. I really do, because he is too old. I think he's too old, However, he's running. So since he's running, and since the other candidate is going to be Trump, to me, lots of kids say they're not going to vote for him. I'm not going to vote for Biden. I don't like his policy on this, I don't like his policy on that. I'm just not going to vote. Are you going to vote for Trump? No. And I always say, life is not a menu. There's no other choice. And so it's not like you can go into a restaurant and say, yes, I'd like to have the trout, but no cilantro. That's not a voting booth. Okay, so, yes, I think he's too old. Trump is also old. The thing is that Trump is so horrible that the old is even meaningless. So that, yeah, I think he's too old. I don't know why he's running. I guess it must be. It must be. It's very hard to be the president, but it must also be fun.
I think so. Now, another thing you said recently, which I must say I really liked, you said you've got two needs, cigarettes and revenge. So cigarettes, that's obvious. Revenge, that's more interesting. Do you like your revenge eaten hot or cold?
It's always good. And people are saying, it's not good. The desire for vengeance is not a high human desire, but it's very satisfying. And it's even when the people don't know. Sometimes I've had revenge on people, and I think they don't know. And I think, are you wondering why you didn't get that fellowship? Well, I know why you didn't get it.
Can you hold a grudge for a really long time?
Forever. Holding grudges is, I think, just another word for having standards.
I found one inconsistency when I was reading about you, what I thought looked like an inconsistency. So it's about dyeing hair. So let's move from the end of democracy to hair dye, because I think that's
Yep, they're related.
a completely obvious move. Here's my segue. So you dye your hair, I dye my hair. But I think you said that men doing the same thing is repulsive.
Repulsive.
Why? What's the difference?
Okay, because we, meaning humans, are used to artifice in women. Okay?
But you're not artificial. You haven't changed your face. You're American. You haven't even changed your face.
No, I haven't, but in
you have
general.
a consistent wardrobe that is for you, not for others.
Right, but artifice in women is something people don't even really notice. Most women wear makeup, even girls do. Some men wear makeup, and you notice it right away. Okay. Also, it's unfair.
But why is it repulsive?
Because it's greedy. In other words, like, oh, we gave you the world, men. That's not enough. You also have to have dark hair. And also you can always tell. You can tell women do it too, but you don't register it in the same way. It's not that I'm 73. No one my age has still dark hair. No one. So my hair went gray at a very early age. It's one of the things I inherit from my mother. In fact, the only thing I inherit from my mother's family. But with men, and it always looks. Ronald Reagan, he had that orange hair. It's like, come on.
But if we're taking back women, if we're taking part of the control that had belonged to men for a very long time, then can't we give them hair dye in return?
No, they have everything else. A friend of mine always says, men, they own the joint.
The other thing you said is there are no consequences for lying now. Now, do you think that is genuinely a shift in the behavior of the world, particularly in America?
I meant for certain politicians. Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the luckiest man who ever lived. He has never done nothing right, everything wrong. He's paid no consequences. In fact, he ended up the president of the United States. Okay, starting from childhood, he did things wrong. Okay, so I think that they don't pay a penalty. They live in a world of no consequence. A lot of people do. most people don't. And in a certain way, most people in the world live in a world of massive consequence, having nothing to do with anything they did wrong at all.
So in your eyrie in New York, let's just cast forward and Donald Trump does win. Do you stay there and batten down? What do you do if it happens?
Well, actually, unbeknownst to me, when I say unbeknownst to me, when I make these speaking dates, it's like a year or 2 years in advance. So my agent calls, do you want to do this date? And I don't have a computer. So he's looking at the computer. I have a little Lather book that I get each year, but this is before I get the book. So I'm going to Europe in the fall. Unbeknownst to me, on election day, I'm going to be in London.
So maybe you'll stay.
So someone said, well, the good thing, I was very upset. I tried to change it, but I couldn't change the dates because I wanted to be home. I mean, I can vote before I leave, but I want to be there, They said, well, it's good because if Trump wins, you could just stay there. I said, yeah, but if Trump wins, I'm going to get blamed. Because when you're in another country, you get blamed for anything the United States does.
True.
And I know this because this happened to me numerous times. So that I said, I don't want Trump to win, but I don't want to be blamed for it, when I'm in London, which I know I will be.
So you come from a long line of writers observing humanity with all its fabulous flaws. But I'm thinking again about you not being part of the online world. Do you think that someone like you, who concentrates on the world in front of us, who observes people's behavior, do you think there's going to be more of you, or do you think you are the last of a very famous kind?
I don't know if I'm the last, but there are not going to be more.
Why is that?
No, because everyone looks at this stuff, so that, even people my age, let alone people who are young, for sure not, but even people my age who used to be like more observant are looking at their phones all the time. So no, I don't, I'm the last. Okay. Which may, there may be many people who greet that with happiness, but I'm the last.
I just want to ask you a question, which has been a question it's been part of the Australian way for many decades. So you're the great observer of cities, particularly New York. What have you observed about the city you're in now, Sydney?
Well, I was here one other time, but from what I can see, I think what people don't realize is how little I see of any place I am. I've been here a few days. Usually I'm one night, and so that I usually see nothing. I can't remember when it was, maybe a few years ago, I went to Dublin for the first time, and I'm in a car coming from the airport, and I'm thinking James Joyce. I'm thinking of Joyce, I'm thinking of lines from Joyce, and we get into the town, I look out the window, the first thing I see is a sushi restaurant. So I thought, Fran, the world is not a book. So I see the theater, I see the hotel, and I don't see much, I have to tell you.
The world is a book. There are worse things for the world to be, right?
There would be, yes, yeah.
Fran Lebowitz, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.